Joining us now to discuss, MSNBC contributors Hugh Hewitt, host of the daily morning show bearing his name on the Salem Radio Network, and Joan Walsh, national affairs correspondent for The Nation. So, Hugh, let me start with you. We've got a dispute here, apparently, where the CIA is saying, look, not only was Russia, the Russian government involved in hacking, they were doing it specifically to elect Trump. You got the FBI that does not want to go there, so you've got that dispute. But you don't have a dispute when it comes to the intelligence agencies in this country saying Russia was behind those leaked emails, those hacked emails. Donald Trump, though, is saying, hey, I don't even know if that's true. Is that a reasonable position for him to take?
I think the president-elect was making a different point when he made his comments on Fox News yesterday. I heard him saying that it's ridiculous to say that the Russians won the election for him. He won the election. His own terms, he broke the blue wall. On the other hand, anyone who knows that the Russians put Alger Hiss at the elbow of FDR at Yalta, they turned Aldrich Ames, they turned Robert Hansen. They know the Russians, as Senate Majority Leader McConnell said, are not our friends. They've conducted espionage and dirty operations in the United States since they were the Soviet Union, and they will again. And so I think it's possible to hold both positions. The Russians are bad guys. They acted bad here. I think they were behind the WikiLeaks front. I said so during the campaign. But I also think it's ridiculous to get the Electoral College mixed up in this, because there's no cause and effect shown here at all.
Yeah, and Joe, what Hugh's talking about there, we mentioned this at the top, there's this effort, there's 10 members of the Electoral College right now, right. 9 Democrats, 1 a Republican. They're saying, hey, look, we still haven't actually met and voted on this thing. We want briefings. We want intelligence briefings on whatever the Russian role might have been. John Podesta, who was the Clinton campaign chairman, coming out today saying he actually supports that. Is there a risk here, though, from the standpoint of Democrats, that this looks like what Hugh is talking about, that this looks like Democrats who just can't accept that they lost and are trying to blame it on foreign intervention?
Why are people afraid of getting to the bottom of it, Steve? Why are people afraid of having the Electoral College have more knowledge before they vote? If we have an Electoral College, it should be for things. They're not just supposed to be a rubber stamp. If they're a rubber stamp, then let's get rid of it. Let's just go to national popular vote, which a lot of us would support. But I want to take issue with something that Hugh said early on. Donald Trump did not merely say, I just don't believe that the Russians intervened on my side. He said he doesn't believe it, plain and simple. It could be Russia, Hugh, it could be China, it could be somebody in their bed, hacking from their bed. I don't know where he gets these images from. They're kind of creepy. But he absolutely denied what his friends in the Republican Party and you yourself, Hugh, have been saying. He refuses to accept the reality that this is the consensus of the intelligence agencies.
Is there, Hugh, have you noticed in Donald Trump the way he's reacted to these revelations, to the news, at least from what the CIA is claiming right here? Does he seem too defensive? Does he seem too hostile to the conclusions, the apparent conclusions of the intelligence community?
No, I think he seems abrupt because it's silly. I think the whole thing is silly. What we faced here, Steve, and Joan knows this, is first an attempt to delegitimize the Trump election by saying it was Director Comey's fault. Secretary Clinton came out and blamed fake news last week. This week they're blaming the Russians, when we all should be recognizing and not being an election denier. It sounds like Joan's going into the election denier camp.
No, I'm not. I'm going into the camp of more information, Hugh. This is a really serious issue.
Trump won. Donald Trump won. I agree with Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan that the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee need to get to the bottom of what the Russians did, if it was the Russians alone or through third-party actors, find out and then take reprisals, because none of this would have happened if the red line had not been erased, if North Korea, when they hacked Sony, had felt sanctions. The fact is, the weakness of the Obama years led to increasing number of cyber attacks on America, and now they're paying the piper, and it's not Donald Trump's fault that Secretary Clinton had a server in her basement. It's not Donald Trump's fault.
That's not the issue either.
Well, but in terms of this question of affecting do you believe this is what we have right now? If the intelligence community's conclusions are correct, and Russia was behind the leaked DNC emails this summer, then you had the Podesta emails that were sort of trickling out throughout the campaign.
They clearly hurt her.
Do you think that affected the election?
There's a cohort of Bernie Sanders people who absolutely believe falsely that the DNC rigged it for her. There are people who made a decision not to support her. They could make up that 70,000 in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. We'll never know. But I want to go to one other thing that's important here that we haven't mentioned yet: the role of Mitch McConnell. Because what Mitch McConnell is upset about today, comments a little bit differently when he says no one can believe Republicans wouldn't want to get to the bottom of this. He was asked, the administration sent Jay Johnson, they sent James Comey and Lisa Monaco to brief a bipartisan group of congressional leadership in September and say, we would like to come out and we would like to make a bipartisan statement, not that they're on the side of Trump, but that Russians have hacked, we believe Russians were responsible for these hacks, and we also would like to come out and say we'd like to warn states and local officials to really secure their voting apparatus, because we know that they got into the databases. We know they got into the databases of 2 different states. Illinois was one of them. And McConnell shut them down. So that's the other thing that's at issue here. He's fine saying it now, and he's acting like, oh, the Russians aren't our friends. But when he had the chance to do something patriotic and bipartisan, he shut it down. And for whatever reason, the Obama administration went along with it.
Hugh, play this out a little bit. What does it mean? We've talked so much about what the mandate is that Donald Trump earned in the election, what that means in terms of sort of moral authority as president, these things that I guess are difficult to measure statistically. If these investigations, if we go down the road of having these investigations, and it is put out there as a matter of public record that the Russians did intervene, were behind these leaks, if that's something that can be conclusively demonstrated to people, what would that mean? Would that mean anything for Donald Trump in terms of his legitimacy, in terms of his moral authority as president?
No, Steve. I think what the left is trying to do, and Joan's very good at it, is to progressively delegitimize Donald Trump's presidency. He won, and fake news doesn't change it, and Director Comey doesn't change it, and the Russians don't change it.
Let's remember that.
And the popular vote also doesn't matter, because the constitutional majority is the Electoral College. And next week, the Electoral College makes him president for final and for good. Now, what matters here is the attempt to slow down President-elect Trump's nomination of a Supreme Court justice, of 13 courts of appeal vacancies, of 90 other. Harry Reid gave to the Republicans, and he's trying to cover the fact that he made the greatest strategic blunder of the last 50 years by destroying the filibuster. So the Republicans get all of their nominees, they get their Supreme Court nominee, they get their appellate court nominee, because Harry Reid made a bad choice. And a lot of this is simply Harry Reid's attempt to cover up the fact that he blew his most important decision.
It's not just Harry Reid.
All right, well, that's when we get on to Supreme Court. That'll be a conversation for another day. I'm sure that one is coming down the pike. Hugh Hewitt.